Welcome to the Talent Equation Podcast. If you are passionate about helping young people to unleash their potential and want to find ways to do that better, then you've come to the right place. The Talent Equation Podcast seeks to answer the important questions facing parents, coaches, and talent developers as they try to help young people become the best they can be. This is a series of unscripted, unpolished conversations between people at the razor's edge of the talent community who are prepared to share their knowledge, experiences, and challenges in an effort to help others get better faster. Listen, reflect, and don't forget to join the discussion at thetalentequation.co.uk. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Talent Equation. I've gone a bit sort of trans-global today because I've got a guest on from the show who's all the way from Brisbane in Australia. Craig Gunn's with me. We've been discussing stuff on Twitter. We've been throwing some ideas around, and I just thought to myself, right, this guy needs to come on the show. We need to have a chat. We need to find out a bit more about what's going on. Craig, welcome.
Oh, thanks, Stuart. Very excited. This is my first one of this sort of thing, but you're making a dent. I love.
Great. Yeah. Good stuff. Hey, listen. So, like I said before, we've just started sort of, back and forth with Twitter, and we've had some good conversations. But why don't you tell everybody kind of what your story is? Tell us how you kind of arrived at where you are.
Okay. Look, I was an army kid, so brought up in the sort of army villages. So we had lots of time to play. Everyone, mass games. So look, I was a keen rugby league player. Not that skilled in comparison to some of the people that you seem to have on your show, but certainly, look, I loved it, and I kept playing until I was 24. I'm a 10 plus year PE teacher, but my teaching degree almost took longer than that 10 years. I've got to tell you, because I'm a person who goes a bit of, into everything, whether it be business and traveling to the UK, playing rock and roll bands, all that kind of stuff. But I think the reason why I bring this up is I think it actually has helped me to be the kind of coach that I am. So anyway, I've done 8 years of higher education, teaching at QUT, for example, where Ian Renshaw hangs out, and also I was the head lecturer at the Catholic Uni up here. I've got a Masters of Education, and I'm making that slow journey towards the PhD in sports coach education. And I think we talked a little bit about that on the emails. And yeah, look, recently I suppose I've dabbled in this sport, supposed to be our national sport called AFL, or Australian Rules Football, where I'm a bit of a consultant. And I'm sure that'll come out a bit later. And look, I thought as I heard some of your people talking about some of the things that they've coached. Well, I've coached 11 sports, and I've got to say that one of the things that has really stuck with me in my journey was a Catholic priest who was a principal who said, kids learn teachers, not subjects. So I think I've had the most success there, just connecting through relationships, and most of the good coaches around the world, we know that's how they do it. There's my story there, Stuart.
Right. I mean, that's obviously a very, very varied background. So you got, a PE teacher background, and now you're in the kind of higher education space, teaching, lecturing, and also researching at the same time?
Yeah, and look, I kind of promised myself that, and I even said to you over the email, I'm no academic. I'm a learner, and so I prefer the field. So whilst I'm continuing the learning journey, I like to consider myself a coach. So yeah, but the research is happening under Dr. Brennan Moy, who has written lots of stuff with Ian Renshaw and Keith Davids, and also one of your countrymen in Anthony Rossi.
Right, brilliant stuff. So, well, I mean, you say academic, you're a learner. I mean, that sounds to me like you're very welcome in this place then, because as you may have heard in previous episodes, I'm a bit of what you might call a frustrated academic, I suppose, in the sense that I've always wanted to be able to sort of spend the time to be able to, I suppose, bring to life some of the thoughts and ideas through kind of a research proposal. But of course, life, coaching, family, jobs, and all that sort of stuff seems to get in the way. Having said that, I am in some conversations with my old university supervisor, who is is potentially going to take me on. He's obviously crazy, maybe to do some kind of work around a postgraduate or a PhD. So I'm on the same journey as you, but again, I want to try and make everything that I do very, very applied and very kind of usable by people who are out there, at the coalface.
Yeah, and look, that's why I think, it was Ian Renshaw who told me, I'd never even been on a podcast before, and he said, listen, Gunny, you need to get on to, have you ever listened to The Talent Equation? And my kids got me onto my iPhone, showed me how easy it was, and I, of course, listened to Ian's, first session and fell in love with it. But the strong message and why I thought when you first mentioned that maybe you'd have some value or I could add some value is the idea that, yep, you're simplifying the theory, and a lot of it is common sense, and I'm sure that'll come out. But in the end, you're actually focusing on the practice. And look, it's a real challenge, and yeah, I found it hard. I've been working with the constraints-led approach since 2011 when I first started teaching that at QUT. But before that, because of my background, and if we get to it, you'll find out more. I was always using that kind of an approach, which everyone thought was a bit, crazy. But thankfully, I discovered that there was this wonderful learning theory that underpinned it. So there you go.
Well, tell you what, let's sort of jump in there a little bit, I think, because it's probably a nice starting point, and just sort of kind of, I guess, let's explore that, because I think it's a really important element. And whilst, I don't want to get overly academic, I think it's important just to understand some of the, what underpins this approach, because I think that's where a lot of the misunderstanding happens in terms of, whenever I have conversations with people about, different approaches and all this sort of stuff, I think it's important to understand that. So, just sort of spell out for me kind of what your take, as a practitioner, what your take on the learning theory is, and kind of how it influenced you and influenced your practice. I'd be really interested to hear.
Yeah, well, every teacher knows that they're supposed to focus on every learner as unique, and it is hard. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. So that's the key thing in the constraints-led approach. The idea, though, that I really try and push when I do any coach education is that, that is the main focus of it. We're all unique, and as a coach, you've got to just think about that. And we as coaches, we all know that, kids have got different strengths, or adults, fear this or that. So that's the main thing. But intertwined with that, I think, is the idea from, Keith Davies and friends that, I suppose perceptual awareness, technical skills, and decision-making can and should be trained together rather than in isolation. And I love that idea that you're trying to push with Sport England, that we're going into the future, which is the ecological approach, which makes sense anyway, because we know that kids aren't playing outside anymore. And so a lot of success from, the greats, for example, in rugby league, Jonathan Thurston, there's no way that he learnt any of that stuff through drill, in my opinion. But anyway, that'll all come out. So they're the two key things. But apart from that, and I'm going to try and not be academic here, but the 5 principles: individuals and teams can self-organise. That's your card stuff, and our job as the coach manipulating constraints. The one that we can manipulate is the task constraint, which leads into representative task design, which has the key information. I think from my experience with coaches, that after simplification, which is number 3, are the easiest ones to grasp. Because simplification, like using tennis balls in your hands, like the Christian brothers used to teach us to, wrap in rugby union tackling. That was a constraint, and it's intuitive. So representative task design number 2, simplification number 3, and number 4, very hard to convince. Lots of sports, especially when, for example, in Australian rules, they focus on the kicking so much, it's so important, and there's set shots. The idea of practice being variable, that they're going to be better skill-wise through that, that's a hard one for anyone to focus. And number 5, focusing on the external focus of attention. With all my experience, 80-odd teams I've coached and all that kind of sports, last year coaching under 11 girls, and having an official complaint made about me because I hadn't taught them certain skills. So, for example, when I taught them how to handball, I just got softer, rounder balls, and rather than breaking it down, fingers each side of the seam, and laces on the outside, that kind of stuff, I just said, make a fist like. So these are girls. most of them had never played. Just make a fist like Superman or Wonder Woman and hit the ball. None of this stuff about, put the thumb this way or that, because they're going to work it out implicitly, aren't they? Just through the action of it. So, yeah, that's the look. Brendan Moy, my supervisor, he's my chief supervisor. God love him. He said he's got the explanation down to one paragraph with the constraint-led approach, which, mate, I'll believe it when I read it. And we'll see how it goes. And I know it's based on all these guru academics, Gibson and Friends and Bernstein. But even the idea of the constraint-led approach, I mean, that can be confusing. Sometimes it's better because a constraint is a boundary that can bring you back or allow you to move and create. That's why I think sometimes I'd be better off saying, and I'll have to say this a bit quieter, condition rather than constraint.
Do you know, it's funny, I use the same language as well when I'm doing coach education courses. With beginner courses, we just talk about different ways that you condition games. Or I like the phrase. That one of your fellow countrymen, who was a major influence on my coaching for a long time, was about Rick Charlesworth. So I'm I'm
about to say that name. There you go. Yeah,
he talked about designer games, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Way back,
and that's where Game Sense came.
Yeah. Well, Game
Sense came from designer games. Game Sense, of course, they brought out Rod Thorpe, the Australian Sports Commission. So we were like ahead of the game back then, and just working from Rick Charlesworth, and came up with this wonderful stuff. But like you guys are finding right around the world, no doubt. Yeah, look, it's there. I can remember it must have been the podcast I just listened to by Nick from Irish Rugby Union. He asked you the question. He asked about, all the research is saying this is the way to go. How are we going to do it? That's a good case in point. Rick Charlesworth, 1993, designer games through to Game Sense, 1995. It was official. It was launched. I started coaching with Game Sense in the year 2000. But still, even so, this is in PE teachers in Queensland, let alone tennis coaches through Mitch Hewitt and Ken Edwards and Brendan Susi. Even if they say they're using it, TGFU or whatever, or a constructivist approach, they don't. When they analyse, they're using a command approach. But let's try and keep all the references out of it, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I've just been slightly distracted because my little daughter Isla's come in and she wants to ask me a question. What do you want to ask me? What do you want to ask me, Isla? Come round here. Come on here. This is Craig from Australia. He's on the podcast. Come over here. Come round. Come over here. Say hello to Craig.
Hello, Isla.
Hello.
This is your first time on the podcast, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're going to like this. Anyway, what would you like? Yes, of course you can. Off you go. You want to do some drawing, don't you? Yes, well done.
Beautiful.
Right, say bye-bye.
Mate, that's the dynamic system there, mate.
That is, it's right there. Yeah. It's interesting. There were some constraints provided. Close the door, please. Thank you. There were some constraints provided to the children about whether they were allowed to come into the room or not while I was recording, and clearly I wasn't clear enough in how I provided those constraints.
Well, see, that's where a militaristic approach is okay.
Exactly. So anyway, getting back to the point, she's to be fair, actually, it's quite funny that she's come on because she's quite an interesting little character. Actually, she's got a bigger brother who's older. He's about 3.5 years older than her, and they play so well together. And Evan's currently talking about adaptability. We had a diagnosis recently of Evan really struggles with his reading, and he's dyslexic. So, but what's really interesting is talking about adaptation. Like how creative is it in other domains, like, kind of building things with Minecraft or Lego or drawing or this, that and the other. He can just get absorbed in that kind of stuff. So it's kind of an interesting case study in adaptability. And what's really interesting is how she adapts around him as well. It's really fascinating.
Oh, yeah, look, it's amazing, isn't it? And interestingly, teachers, I'm sure, have known that forever. Now we've just got some, theory, some learning theory behind it, which is beautiful. Because, the stuff we were talking about before, I don't want to, sully anything, but, finally we've got this approach and we've got learning theory, whereas, before it was based on, just good judgment, gut assumptions, I suppose.
So I'm kind of keen to sort of drill into this a little bit more. So I'm, as you know, kind of working through this myself, and I think I think we have a very similar story because. So Rick Charlesworth and Designer Games, I was coaching early stages of my hockey coaching career at that point, and we've got this all-conquering Australian team that are female team particularly that winning gold medals and World Cups left, right, and centre. And and he's talking about Designer Games, and I'm thinking this is interesting. And I've also got Rod Thorpe stuff going around talking about teaching game through understanding, and I'm thinking to myself about how do I like to learn, and how did I in my childhood, how did I create? I talked to Ian about this, about creating backyard games and golf ball nightmare and all these different games that I used to play and create with my brother. And I'm thinking to myself, there's something in this, and so I've been experimenting with this stuff for best part of 15 years, but making so many mistakes and really not knowing what I'm doing. And then, like you say, around about what was it, 2011 or so, it sort of felt to me like this kind of the research. It felt to me like the research came back to me. So I felt like I was plowing my own furrow for a long time. Everybody else was going like super technical. Everything was about kind of drilling and repetition and all these sorts of things. And then eventually, I was sort of thinking, no, it's just not the way I want to go. I want to go a different way. And then all of a sudden the research arrived, and I saw all this stuff on kind of social media, but then also started to dig into it in much more detail around reading some of the articles and and Keith's book and various others, and then I met Rick Shuttleworth, and I met the likes of Ian Renshaw, like I said, and all that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden it's like, here's the Eureka moment. Right, now we're in the right space. It just feels like we're at the start of a really interesting journey.
Oh no, you look and. Just listening to you and John O'Sullivan and a few of you, and again, I've only just started listening to podcasts. I can feel what you're saying, and I think I've said that already. I feel you are making a dent now, and I told Ian that too. It's really happening, but there's issues with the approach that I would love to find out what you guys are going to do in coach education, just to. Actually in Sport England, how you're going to get the practitioners to handle some of the issues that I've seen.
Go on, tell me more about that, because I'm interested.
Oh, well, certainly. Well, how I got involved in AFL was they came and approached me at the university where I was working at the time and said, can you come and teach us something about game sense? So that was to their 30. This was at the biggest region in Queensland, to their 30 full-time and permanent staff. And I thought to myself at the time, well, hang on, there's academics like Shane Pill, who you've more than likely come across. He's an AFL person. He's written books on this stuff, and others too, who are top-line coaches. And okay, they want me, and I started to. I gave them 3 or 4 hours of practical stuff, and I really did work out that at that point they really, even though the AFL manual said that they favour a game sense approach, it hadn't filtered down enough at that point. So I rung Shane Pill. Hadn't met him before. He seemed excited anyway. He said, I've been looking for people like you in every state. And he called me a pedagogue. Had to look that up, but I think it means someone with a bit of a research background who can work with the practitioners as well. And so we did a little case study where I worked with 9 AFL coaches directly, just using game sense, not so much the constraints-led approach. And we found that only 8. Sorry, out of the 9 coaches, only 1 was able to even stop and observe and take a step back. So even they call what I do around the area Gunny. Australians have these nicknames: Gunny Madness, Gunny Chaos, ugly footy, that kind of stuff. Which you and I know it's not. I can structure it, but I feel that it's almost too much for them at this point because they haven't learned basic pedagogy, the art and the science. You call it craft. The art of PE teaching, for example, lots of the aha moments seem to come when I'm working with a coach and they said, "Oh, geez, when you hopped down on one knee there, all the other under 8s did as well. That's amazing." And so here's where I'm sort of thinking to myself in my own coach education study. Yeah, like I'm pushing this nonlinear pedagogy and those 5 principles I talked about earlier, and they're going to learn from each other through the small community of practice. But how else, like on a big scale, are you guys going to be able to, get it out there and simplify it for everyone? Geez, mate, I'd be so excited if I can see that it becomes widespread throughout the UK, because that'll mean that everyone will jump on board eventually.
Well, it's interesting. So I wouldn't say that the constraints-led approach, or maybe let's call it the ecological approach, this idea of environmental adaptation. I wouldn't say that is universal. Now, interestingly, from a day job perspective, with what I'm doing at Sport England and trying to sort of, change the way we coach, interestingly enough, a change of environmental constraints has brought about this by necessity. So, kind of interestingly, the task we have within what we're doing in Sport England. I mean, for a long time, for the last 8 years or so, we were just focused on traditional sport. Through what a governing body would offer. And it was largely driven by a kind of talent development agenda. That's not entirely true. There was also, participation aspects as well, significantly. But, and it was about, all that sort of stuff. But our role now is slightly different, because our government changed their sporting strategy, which was much more focused on some of the outcomes that sport can bring around things like, physical well-being, mental well-being, social cohesion, all these sorts of things. And also our task is also is not just around sort of, kind of keeping sporty people doing more sport. It's actually about taking the, significant 30% proportion of people out there who are inactive, and have done absolutely no physical activity or very little physical activity, and actually helping them to become more active. Now, the traditional coaching offer, which, and whenever you think of a coach, you generally think of somebody in a tracksuit shouting instructions from the side of a pitch. That offer does not in any way provide anything for those people who are trying to become more physically active. So the concept of what a coach is, and the concept of the way that those people would be educated, has to change significantly, because at the same time, if you want to, so one of the things we've discovered through a lot of our action-based insight research is that people respond best to people like them. So people from their environment, people from their context, people with their kind of background, with their kind of hopes and fears and aspirations, who can readily empathize with them. So the model is different. Instead of it's about like, here's the technical skills of the sport, and now we're going to also maybe teach you some of the pedagogical elements and some stuff about motivation and this, that, and the other. It's the other way around. We're looking for people who exemplify the behaviors of the audience groups that we're trying to engage, and we're trying to find ways in which we can help them learn and develop so that they can become more effective. Well, that has to be done contextualized, and it has to be done environmentally. So if you like, it's almost like, the task has changed, national task, and therefore the approach has changed. And so actually across the entire organization, we are working in a more ecological way. So the coaching plan that I wrote reflects that. Now, that also has to translate into, so the coaching plan also has to translate into governing body landscape. And the interesting thing about the governing body landscape is that there is a transformation taking place. It is happening, but I wouldn't say it's widespread. And I think it's a bit like you described. I think it's too much for them. I'm generalizing enormously, but it's almost like they want to do this. They really understand it. They really get it. They really want to move forward, but they can't quite take the full step that way because, blimey, it's a bit of a risk. What if we don't have the technical development? It's really interesting.
Yeah, I know. Look, but geez, I'm excited just hearing the fact you're having a crack, though. I've got to tell you, and you're going about it in a smart way, like, picking the right people. Like, how many coaches are out there yelling stuff out, and we just know that they shouldn't be coaching, but us as adults need to try and sort that out. But yeah, so I can see that happening, and you know what, I reckon you're working on there too. Usually, like the whole life coaching, business coaching, executive coaching side of things, etc. They've been informed by sports coaches. Now, I think they've evolved a lot further, believe it or not. And now maybe we're starting to, listen to them because, for example, that I don't know if you come across the GROW model from Whitmore, 1994. That's business coaching, you know. But mate, that is some of the greatest, questioning that I've used one-on-one with players. So I think that you're focusing on the right people, like someone with a heart, and things will get a bubble on from there. Geez, mate, I love it.
Do you know what? I'm really glad that you mentioned the Grow model, because actually, for me, that was a game changer as well.
Oh, yeah.
When I discovered the Grow model, that was an absolute. I mean, firstly, from the perspective of helping people decide what it is they actually want to do in the first place, but then secondly, using the Grow model live in questioning is just so powerful.
Oh, mate, without it, look, honestly, all you need to do is, as you know, is do an internet search of Grow model, and 40 questions will come up, and if you've had experience, and if you're a person who's looking to coach. Individuals are key, as you know, and basically that model just allows you to elicit exactly what that person wants in their change. I did the same thing with one of the elite sport academies here. Asked me for some feedback, and but before I started, I used the Grow model just to find out really what was going on, why they were coaching the way they were coaching. So then I could help myself frame the feedback.
Yeah.
I could find out exactly what they wanted.
So I would like to think that most of my listeners have probably heard of the Grow model, or are probably using it themselves. But there may be some out there right now, and I can probably hear them right now going, "What the hell is the Grow model?" So, tell you what, and I'm, as you know, on the show try and be really practical. So, walk me through. Give me an example of like how you'd use the Grow model in your coaching.
Oh well, say recently with a young AFL player. I could tell some stories about this. So he was an under-14 representative team, and he was the only guy who didn't want to embrace the idea. I'm all about ritual, like we called ourselves the Wolf Pack, and I had a little sign that I stole from Hulk Hogan back in the Wolf Pack days, and he didn't want to be part of it, but he was our best defender, and so I just used because I like to talk to players one-on-one, so he's in my mind now, and I for example, asked him, okay, what is it that you want to work on? And I think, so this was at halftime, for example, and he said, let me just think now. Oh yeah, he needs to improve his kicking. Okay, and there was so much more going on because we were playing Papua New Guinea this game. Okay, so what is the reality of it now? Okay, so the reality is, okay, well, how's it really looking? I had actual questions prepared. Okay, and then the O is for the options. Okay, so they own the options. Okay, so if you did this or if you did that, how would this look? And then finally, it's a wrap up. You can do that on the run. I know it sounds a bit awkward now, but basically, just thinking about it, like I can remember him. For example, when I asked him about his defence, he put up 8 out of 10. Okay, and I said, okay, so what do you need to do to get to that? No, I think I said, oh, come on, mate, you've been a bit harsh on yourself, and he upped it a little bit. So what are the options? What did he need to do? So he actually needed to get in front of his player, and I think he said, I've got to punch that bull. And then by the end of it, I said, now what do you really reckon? So here's the wrap up, and he gave himself a 10. God love.
Brilliant.
But that's the Grow model. I think it's really simple, far more simple than my explanation there. Well, but yes, get onto it, people.
Well, I it's interesting. So I kind of almost use it almost subconsciously now. So I was working on Wednesday night with a group, and we'd established a game, and I gave them bonus points for it. It was about awareness of space and using space effectively in order to sort of give themselves decision-making time. And they got bonus points if they were trying to they were trying to pass the ball a certain number of times. They get like 5 points for that. But if they use the space effectively and then make a connection, make a pass to somebody else, then they get a bonus point. And I call out the bonus point. So like me calling out the bonus point was almost a bit like a hot review, because they kind of knew that, I've done it, I've done the right thing. Anyway, but periodically I'd just pull a player out, and I'd say, because I'd seen something, and the first question I'd ask them. So going to and just for everybody's benefit, GROW stands for goal, reality, options, and will. or wrap up. It depends which way you look at it. I actually add another. It's all right. I add another one to it, which is strategy. Because often, once you've got somebody to make a commitment, you might also want to design a strategy with them. But that don't always use that one anyway. So pull them out, and I pull it. So right, how do you get points in this game? And you say, yeah, I got to make 5 passes. You get 5 points. Yeah, how else do you get points in this game? How do you get bonus points? You get bonus points by carrying the ball to space. So boom, we've got the goal established, right? And I say, so what? A minute ago, just then, you got the ball, and then somebody tapped you. What happened then? And you're gone, I didn't use the space. Okay, so now we've established a reality. Okay, so now what can you do? What can you do now? And he's gone, well, I need to move into the space. Yeah, but what do you need to know in order to move into the space? I need to know where it is. Yeah. So what do you need to do for that? I need to look around. Okay, great. Okay, are you going to do that next time? Yes. Let's go. Even that probably took a bit longer than it actually did in the time, but that was kind of that's sort of essentially me using the grow model and just using that as a reference point. I find it really powerful.
No, too right. And but the point is, your example's far clearer than mine. The game sense idea, for example, or constraints. Like if you hear anything from Ian, you don't have to ask questions. It depends on who you are, but I like the grow model, so just get organised. I was focusing, often on one player, and it was a good feedback tool for me. Like I picked him because he didn't like the Wolfpack idea, so I needed to connect to him in a better way. So I had structured questions written down. And it was powerful, as you said.
It's interesting because, funnily enough, I mean, in that session, I was reflecting on it, and I was looking back. I mean, and none of this necessarily was pre-planned. The main bit that was pre-planned was the theme of what I was planning, what I was working on, which was around, utilizing space effectively in order to create decision-making opportunity. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was the sort of central activity. That was the main part of my plan. The rest of it kind of came in the moment, adapting to what the players were doing. So I did at a later stage, without giving the group feedback, I just changed the size of the area and then asked them, what do you notice about the difference in terms of the difference between this? Well, there's a lot less space to use. Oh, okay, that's interesting. So if we make the area bigger now, do you think you're going to be able to use that? So then off we went. And you know what I mean? It's like you've got a number of different approaches to use here, and you can float within them as much as you want to. But when I reflected back, I'm like, I probably threw about 15, 16 constraints in an hour session. I was sort of thinking, maybe I did too many. I don't know.
Mate, I overdo it all the time, mate. It's just something that I don't know what it is. That's where it is a bit chaotic. But I'm always able, like yourself, and you keep talking about how complex coaching is, and it is. Because I've got 4th year PE teachers who you've just got to really hammer the point that, guys, if something's not working, it's okay to stop. Just please stop and think and start again. We can do that. I mean, simplification's really good, but sometimes I actually, I feel I'm a bit like those guys. Like I don't do a lot of talking, but like those guys who think that they're doing something really well, but they're probably not, because I like to stand on my own whistle. Like I've got my own routine that everyone's used to, and again, that's to control the chaos. So if I blow 2 whistles, for example, they've got to all turn and find where I am, and lean over and put 2 hands on their knees, etc. So yeah, I reckon I can overdo it. But when Dr. Brendan Moy came and watched me as we're getting ready for this coach education pilot, he was happy that I stood back a lot more and let them play a lot more than other coaches. But yeah, look, once again, geez, we've got to actually keep being critical of ourselves, because that's what the kids deserve.
Yeah.
Stuart,
This is one of the interesting things, though, and this sort of comes back to what you were talking about earlier about it being too much for them. And I wrestle with this, and I mentioned it when I was talking to Ian about this, and I think the phrase I used, it's not mine, I'd heard it from someone else, which was, is the constraints-led approach a fighter jet that only test pilots can fly?
Now, interesting, that one, because I heard that, and I agreed with you. And Ian seemed to not hear, or he didn't. Maybe he didn't understand the context. But when you said that certain coaches who are novices get it a lot more, mate. That is 100% what I have found. So much so now, talk about constraints. If I do coach education in Aussie rules, I actually, first, to get them used to the idea of, you don't line up. Okay, so I just say, mess the chairs up and sit in any position. Okay, because we're all about, 360 degrees. But then after I start, I'll ask them, okay, hands up, who played senior football or any sport at a representative level? And they sit on my left, and everyone else is on my right. And then I point to the guys on the right, and I say, you guys are far more likely to accept what I'm saying in this presentation. And it's going to be a bit controversial. Can anyone tell me why? And they can all tell me why, because they weren't the guys who firstly were hammered by the approach and were successful in spite of the approach because, they were so good in the backyard and in PE classes. And number two, because of that, they remain curious. Okay, they're always asking themselves questions. Well, I wonder if there's a better way. Or, I don't like when I get yelled at, or I don't like when I'm, waiting in the queue and I get, picked on, that kind of stuff. Shouldn't be laughing about that. But, is there a better way? Mate, I agree. So I don't think that there needs to be a jet pilot to be able to operate the approach. But I do think you need to be far more open to doing things differently, which, I just don't see enough of in my country. And, Aussie rules, Australian rules is the national game, etc. I think that, it's only an assumption. They don't have a lot of competition because they don't have to compare themselves to it. Like when I did my level 2 with the Queensland Rugby Union in a rugby union coaching back in 2001, we were learning about game sense, and I was the only one who'd been to uni doing it. So look, I don't think you have to be. So if I summarise, you just need to be a bit more open, like remain curious, but you need to be able to, recognise that it's a step-by-step approach. For example, at one club I was working with this year, their best coach by far, he's from New Zealand. He was a rugby player, from a Polynesian background, by far the best coach. Now, so I did this presentation, and so he comes he comes along to me, he says, you've got to come and see my first session. And I said, oh, right, okay, no, I'm going to come and see it. And he had 4 games, sense games. So he'd done the research, and it was Shane Bill this or, whoever there. And I said, oh, wow, this is interesting. I'm thinking to myself, I wonder how long it's going to last. And look, it was 2.5 games. He related so well to the guys, and I let him suffer for a bit in this, one game where there wasn't a lot going on. The kids were going Burko in Australian language, and basically, I just did my usual, 2 whistles, popped out on my knee, brought them down, and then talked to them, and that's when they sort of have to, start learning the art again. You know what I mean? Like that you talked about with the craft. I think there's a lot. I mean, not everyone can be a teacher, but if you coach for 10 years, you should have got all these things. You know what I mean? So it's worth having a crack at constraints-led approach. Geez, that was a lot of talking there. Sorry, Stuart.
Hey, no. This is all good stuff. I mean, one of the things I really hear, and I think I've definitely, interestingly enough, I haven't ever done what you've done, which is this kind of, that these people will get this more than you will. But I've thought it. I've definitely thought it, and I can do it almost now. I walk into a room of, this is like a workshop. It's a course. It's a day-long course. It's called Introduction to Coaching, and it's not assessed. So you don't get, it's not like at the end of it you get qualification. It's just and this is part of a kind of a new approach that they're taking within hockey in GB. That introductory thing. It's about learning. It's not about certification. And I walk in the room, and I almost can guarantee, as I ask them all, I say, I get them all to talk to each other, and I get them to introduce each other and ask them, what your background is, who you're coaching, why you're here, what do you want to get out of it. I usually ask them what their claim to fame is as well. That's always interesting. But anyway, and they give me the background, and I can always tell, almost always go through the room, and I can pretty much immediately work out straight away who is going to be the receptive group and who is going to be less receptive. And the receptive ones are the ones with the least experience as coaches.
Without a doubt. Mate, and again, I haven't seen research on this, and maybe that's where Ian too hasn't seen the research. But mate, my experience definitely suggests you bang on, and you can see it from the body language anyway. The arms folded, and those who were leaning forward, writing notes very differently. And look, it's amazing. Yeah. Like you might get some mum, coming up to you and says, she came to one of the AFL presentations and she was from a soccer background, had never played, and she just thanked me, and I've been coaching this way, and I look around and I've got this game and that game and all this, and I thought I was doing the wrong thing. I said, the number one thing I'd be doing if I were you is counting how many kids turn up next year, because I bet you all of them will.
What's interesting on that is at this. I'm just thinking about this particular course where I had a bit of challenge. I had a bit of pushback from a couple of male coaches who were kind of quite experienced, had played at a decent level. So I had a bit of pushback from them on a number of levels. Lots of stuff we talked about, like competition and kind of winning and losing and equal game time and all sorts of different things related to, sort of coaching experience. And there was this one particular one. Anyway, so when we went through the practical stuff, and what I do is I get them they all go and do practical stuff in pairs, and then they come back, and as a group, we all say, what do we think was brilliant about that session? How could we make it even better? All that stuff. Very, very much a kind of, very, collectively trying to learn from each other. But this one particular female coach, she was just phenomenal, right? So I've used this phrase before, this idea of an entertainer. So in England cricket, and this is actually an Australian influence, funnily enough, there's a guy called Matt Dwyer, who's the head of participation, used to be the head of participation in Australian cricket, has come over here as the head of participation for English cricket, and brought through a new program called All Stars Cricket, which is brilliant for kids, and it's just fantastic. Lots of games and ideas. And there's a girl who works for him called Katie Ritchie. She's fantastic, and she's really influenced by Disney. Went out to the Disney Academy and everything. So she describes that the role of this kind of kids activator role, or whatever kids get, should be like people like Tigger. And this woman she was the epitome she was Tigger, right? And she was brilliant. Anyway, so she went out there, she did a session, and the first thing she did was, right, everybody, you've got to work out what your goal celebration is as a team. So they were doing all sorts of stuff. They were doing headstands, they were doing cartwheels, whatever it was. And these were adults, right? Learning from each other. So score a goal. Make sure you do your goal celebration. So they're all doing that. It's just brilliant. Now, the other guys, the kind of experienced guys, it's all about the doing and the winning and the playing and this, that, and the other. She's about the experience, and they're the gold dust people. They're the people. What was interesting though is talking to her afterwards, reflection. She had absolutely no idea how skillful she was.
Yes. Oh, goodness gracious! Oh no, I I'll get shivers down my spine just thinking of it, because that's one of the things that people don't get about me either. Like I said, I'm all about ritual and stuff like that. Like different dances and all that kind of stuff. I've tried to introduce it at a university level. Because trying to get tribal is important. You know what I mean? And you know what, I picked that up. It was playing senior rugby league, because we had it was 1993, I think. So I was 20, and we had a guy, Wayne Horn's his name. He taught me like on prac too. And he's only just retiring. And he, broke us up into teams, and it was all very tribal. And I said to him, only a couple of weeks ago, did he take that from sport education? He said, no, it was just from his own thing. You know what I mean? And you'd see the A graders who were like amazing players. Heaps had played in the NRL. Just playing little games and celebrating massively in their own little way. And that's where, I don't know, somehow, and I know I'm going to upset some strength and conditioning people here, but I think we've over-scienced it when, like my wife said, you need to talk a bit about the cultural stuff that you've created. So, mate, what an amazing person to learn from, that wonderful young lady.
Yeah, I mean, So, I mean, and for me, that's the exciting moment as a coach educator or as a coach developer, is when you unearth somebody like that. And, so I'm like, sort of say, in the feedback to her, I'm saying, right, you need to think about your next stage progression. She's like, well, I can't go to the next stage. I'm not ready. I haven't been doing this long enough. I said, you have everything they're looking for. Everything. The interesting thing, though, is she's brilliant with kids, and this is the other big transformation we want to try and bring about, which was an aspiration we had a number of years ago, but we never realised it, which is you got your kind of level 3, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and this, that, and the other. But it's always been the level 4 is high performance.
Yeah.
And to me, if I had the power, right, for me, I would have said, right, forget introduction to coaching. You are already a level 2 children's coach. You may be even a level 3 children's coach, because I want to see what does an expert children's coach look like, and actually how can we recognize people to be expert children's coaches, because they're out there. Why don't we give them the recognition?
Mate,
it's just fascinating that we've never done that.
100%, and look, that's an interesting thing, because the Australian model, I think they might have brought out Jean Cote. Like this FTEM model, foundation talent, elite mastery. A lot of it is supposed to be at that foundation level. Like if you're at a club, it's all about the foundation. Like whether that be, you sticking with your club, being an umpire or whatever. And I think a lot of that is also, righto, let's make sure that we have our best coaches also at that, junior level. Like I can't remember who you were talking to, but, someone said, if you got this, top line coach down to little guys, they'd struggle.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And in fact, before I would send my guys who had already had a bachelor degree, and then they had to do a dip ad, and that's a diploma of education to become a PE teacher. Well, and they were all heading for high school. I went to the local primary school, and I asked the PE teacher for them to practice their teaching with preps and year ones. And I said, guys, I know it sounds crazy, but if you can teach these guys, you can teach anything.
Absolutely. So just coming back a bit, I'm just kind of want to drill back into the kind of constraint stuff, because I think there's some fascinating stuff. I mean, we've gone in, as usual with these conversations, we've gone in all sorts of different directions. Very emergent. I like it. Tell me more about Gunny Madness and Gunny Chaos. What does it look like?
Oh, look, basically, I stole this from the gridiron whistle drills, but I don't waste any time. So as soon as I get them, like if at the rep team, they're heading over to me, I'll blow the 2 whistles, and then they start look at me, and I'll ask them to crawl, push the balls with their nose, roll over each other, you name it. But it's all about getting that control early, like with the 2 whistles. Because again, I think that's the key thing that we're missing, because controlling the chaos is important. So yeah, look, I've got I suppose a fairly vivacious personality, and that's what the AFL tells me. The guys in Queensland, you're quite I suppose personality wise out there, but basically, yeah, look, it's all about from there, whatever it may be. Okay, so I was told by the head of Brisbane North, for example, okay, Gunny, what we want you to do is, I don't care at this point, it can be a rugby maul or anything, but you're good at congestion, okay, and we need to get better at getting that ball out from congestion. So it can be a rugby maul or anything, but I want you to have a maul in this mass area, and then they've got to get the ball out. So it might be stuff like just a basic game area, like maybe, I don't know, 20 metres by 40, and you've just got a few people on the outside, and it's mass confusion at the start, because I throw in multiple balls, like once one's going, etc. But what I do at the start is like you would remember from I suppose game appreciation. Let them play the real game, which is that, and that's too hard for them. Okay, and then simplify it. So then I'll throw the ball in that's more like a cricket ball weight, but nice and soft and rubbery, and they've got to underarm it to each other, and then they start finding the space. So people look at that and they think, that's Gunny Madness. But, what I do is, okay, I might have 2 tacklers on each side, and they've got, tennis balls, and then I'll nominate 2 shepherders on each side. So I'll just keep, bringing in the constraints. And people think it's the madness, but again, I've asked, okay, what do you want? Okay, and then I'll say, well, okay, what does it look like? Okay, and then why is it happening? So for example, one team that I worked with recently, and it's a senior women's team in the top comp in Queensland. They came 3rd last year, and they said, "Gunny, need to work on the shepherding." Okay, how come? What's happening? And I started thinking, righto, is it because of fear? Are they lacking strength? Are they not good, picking up the ball? All the reasons behind it. And, God love them, because they were PE teachers. They said, nah, to be honest with you, we just didn't train for it. So, yeah, I think they call it Gunny Madness and Gunny Chaos because they haven't seen it before, to be honest with you. To people from a European background, seeing all that, Spanish soccer and all that kind of stuff, I think it's the way things really get done. And look, do yourselves a favour, any of you guys out there who are interested, if you want to jump on the bandwagon of, Stuart's ideas that, talent ID is a very inexact science. Type in something about Indigenous kids in Australia playing, bush Aussie rules, because honestly, that kind of environment is what creates these wonderful, wonderful players. There's only 2 to 3% of Australians who are Indigenous, and they overrepresent in massive ways in rugby league and AFL. And if you want to see a hard sport where things emerge, okay, just type in something in there. It's quite amazing how things develop. So once again, rambling a bit here, Stuart, but I think along the lines of decision making, technical skills, and perceptual awareness can and should be all trained together. So once I've found out the objectives that they want and the reasons why, I go about manipulating the constraints to, see what I'm looking for.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll try and I know you've sent me the link to those Indigenous kids playing Aussie rules, and I'll try and put it into the show notes as well for people who are kind of interested in digging that one out, because I think it is pretty illuminating. I think you're right. I would take Gunny Madness or Gunny Chaos as one of the as the highest form of praise personally, because I think that perhaps tells us something about how people perceive what good coaching looks like. So they definitely don't think it's messy, and they definitely don't think it's unstructured. But their assumption is it's structured. Everybody knows what they're doing every single second of the time. They're pretty much kind of told what to do, so they don't really have to think about it too much. They're literally just following a pattern and repeating a pattern. And for me, that's the sort of thing that I'm trying to get people to sort of, I suppose, explore beyond, is that really good coaching actually doesn't have to be structured, doesn't have to be, kind of explicit. And I mean, one of the things I've found a lot is that I find it a little bit troubling, if I'm honest, is I've noticed that I've seen whiteboards on the sides of pitches a lot, particularly in rugby union. And you have a big whiteboard. People bring out this massive whiteboard and they write down exactly what the objectives are going to be of the session. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I don't always want to be explicit about that, because sometimes I want to give the kids, I actually want to ask them the question and say, right, what's the problem we're trying to solve here? This game that you're playing, there's a problem to be solved. What are you trying to do? Sometimes I'm explicit, sometimes I'm not. And sometimes part of the task, almost the puzzle, is to try and work out, what is it we're trying to do? And actually, when they have those kind of epiphanies in their little groups, when they do a little huddle and they're starting to say, what we need to do? We need to actually find some space. You go, yeah, that's a great moment,
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing too, with experience, you work out that kids give you the answers, and that's one of the things I have to keep hammering with the PE teachers at university. It might be the first question, but you just keep asking the question. I can remember with my under 11 girls last year, most of them were 9. We were up against these behemoths, and we worked out later that one of the girls was 15. But anyway, and they were seriously scared. And one of the girls had only done gymnastics before. I asked, okay, girls, you're scared. That's not a bad thing. Okay. But what are our advantage? Oh, because they said, look how big we are compared to them and that kind of stuff. And I said, well, what are our advantages? And they, one, mate, I just love this answer. We won't do any head-high tackles. So that's the rate limiter and the affordance all there in one. But it took me a little bit longer to actually get the answer out of them. But they came out with it that, okay, and we had trained for this. And I don't know why AFL players don't do a lot more of it. The ball's on the ground a hell of a lot more. So we are at an advantage, because of our height.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. And once again, look, I'm really so keen to hear more. I mean, I've tried lots of ways to actually, simplify it for people. And one of the easiest ways, I'm not sure if you ever come across the old guru PE academic called Judith Thrink, but in 1993, I try and use this a fair bit. She basically, talked about if you're using a game-centered approach or anything, it's all about routine. Okay, but really, what I try and push after I've done some work with coaches is, okay, I think you've mentioned it in your show already. You've got a drill and you love it and you do it for these reasons. How can we make it that little bit messier so that there's more opportunities to touch the ball, etc., with your perceptual awareness, technical skill, and decision making. But she had these 4 steps. One, I think, was object control. Okay, number 2, complex, making it a bit more complex. So you start bringing in more skills. So rather than it just being the ball on the ground, okay, we're going to grab it to ourselves on the ground and there's a defender chasing us perhaps. And then bringing in a defensive or offensive strategy. And then at number 4, you get to the gameplay. Not that I ever do that myself. Like I get straight into a game, like a bit of Gunny Madness, etc., and then I start breaking it down. But having said that, I like that. I mean, she seems very practical, Judith Thrink, and I've borrowed from it, and it seems to be a lot more effective. Trying to get them to have a bit more of the key information, making it a bit more contextual to the game.
Yeah, I think interestingly enough, when I'm looking at that, I've just been writing that down and thinking about it as you've been talking, and I actually think that, like you, I think I maybe work it backwards or slide through it continuously through the session. So I'll be sliding up and down between object control, adding complexity, reducing complexity, bringing in different aspects of strategic play, offensive or defensive or whatever it might be, like you say, but all related to the gameplay. So I would almost wrap gameplay around all 3 of those things rather than I see them as discrete entities.
Oh, look, I've made it as simple as I can because in the end, most PE teachers and sports coaches around the world, and the research backs it up, go from object control, do too much of it, bang, 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 stage one, and then they go to stage 4, and they're hoping for some skill transfer. And Bunker and Thorpe worked out years ago that in the 1960s, something's not working here. And on top of that, the kids aren't motivated.
Yeah, bingo. That's my big thing. Actually, I talk about that quite a lot. Is people go from isolated object control practice to the chaos of the game and expect to see a transfer, and it's madness. Which is one of the reasons I, in the past have said things like, the war on drills and all these kinds of things. And I've had some real hammer from some parts of the academic community. I call them attackademics because come after me. But the reason I'm saying that is because actually, if you take any kind of isolated object control activity and you add a layer of complexity or add some variability in, then immediately it's become a way more powerful learning model, and it's way more enjoyable, and more skill acquisition takes place. I'm not saying you have to jump all the way to the chaos of the game, but complete isolated movement patterns. Geez, I mean, come on, we've got to be better than that.
Well, having been to uni yourself and all that kind of stuff, like we all did those tests, blocked versus random practice, and random practice wins. You know what I mean? Like whether it be having a circle around the wire and then you go away and all that kind of stuff. And look, anyone who's played a musical instrument knows that too. If you sit down and you play for 3 hours once a week, as opposed to playing 6 times 15 minutes a day, you're going to be much better after you do the random practice. So we've known that for a long time, but once again, object control seems to be the way things get done. And it's really interesting because it's hard to get the message here in Aussie rules anyway, because even the great Damien Farrow, he's written a kicking report in 2010, and it's only 25 pages long too, and really easy to understand. But it was basically non-linear pedagogy. Come on, guys, we got to use variability because it's going to make you better. And look, I was an army kid. Okay, so and my father was the youngest battery sergeant major in the Australian Army ever. Drills worked for me. I still prefer people telling me what to do. But when as a result of that, coach, I'm the total opposite. Because I want the kids to explore. But there's no doubt about the fact that, tennis coaches out there, if Mitch Hewitt's listening, basically Sam Stozer from Australia, who won one Grand Slam, she is a person who likes to be told what to do. But you and I know that drills. That's what is happening generally, even if they say they're not.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, though, just talking about it's interesting. Some elite athletes, I just need to be told what to do. I've heard that as well about Jess Ennis, because apparently Tony Minicello, her coach, talks about this quite a bit, and he says about he discovered that you need to be more facilitative and you need to involve the athlete in the learning process and questioning and this, that, and the other. So he started doing that with Jess, and she turned around and said, "What are you doing? Just tell me what to do." But interestingly, I still think within that's the problem. There is often that we as coaches don't explain to the athletes enough around why different approaches might be beneficial. And I do think, like anything, it's all about context. And there are certain times in the height of performance when actually they just need a fix. Get it? Right. But if we're talking about the learning context, which I'm talking about in a talent development context, if it's about learning and development, then I think the methodology is really different. And we can't just take what an elite athlete wants and apply that to a learning athlete. But even so, even with the elite athlete, I actually think often it's just because they are. I've had athletes do that to me. Say to me, "Just tell me what to do. Stop it with all the questions. Just tell me what to do." And the reason is because they're lazy. So they basically want the information equivalent of a McDonald's. And I'm saying, I'm not going to give you that kind of nutrition. I'm going to give you something that's more nutritious than that. Now, you might not like it as much, but it's better for you.
Well, it's right. I mean, that's the thing. We do know that, close practice can improve you, but it's not going to improve you as much. And like you say, I think you even hit on something that really, I can't remember who it was with, but you guys said you've got to oversell it. You've got to oversell it, or you've got to over-explain it. So, with my experience last year, when I had complaints made about me with these under 11 girls, that was because I just figured, they would see how I get them 3 to 5 times more active than any other coach, that they would accept it. But no, that was pure arrogance really by me. I should have got them all in and explained it properly, which is human decency, let alone good communication about learning. Because in the end, the constraints-led approach, once again, is about them being unique learners, and the other way that things are done is just the way things have always been done. So you've got to really, maybe keep pushing that message. That I can't remember who you spoke to about that, but overselling it is important. I reckon, Stuart.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a really good way to kind of bring our conversation to a close, because I can see 2 children who want to show me their drawings, so I've got to go and be a daddy for a bit. As much as I'd like to talk to you about coaching, Craig. Hey, listen, before we bring it to a close, if people want to find out more about what you're doing within the Aussie rules space, or maybe they want to reach out to you and maybe ask you some questions or this, that, and the other, what's the best way for them to reach you? Have you got a Twitter handle or anything like that?
Now, look, I do have a Twitter handle, but I'm actually never really ever on there. But a friend of mine today started a web page, and you've got to remember Australians with their nickname, so Gunny, Gunny, which is in there. So it's coachgunny.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn, of course, and I've got a Facebook group called Grassroots Australian Rules Football. And so, I'm trying to do my best with our little group, coming from the bottom, unlike how things are happening in Australia, which hopefully is, mirroring what you guys are doing on a national level in England. So yes, guys, coachgunny.com or LinkedIn or Grassroots Australian Rules Football. Awesome. Great. I mean, that's fantastic. And like I said, I'll try and get the link of that video, and I'll try and put that in show notes if I get the time to do that. So yeah, hey, listen, this has been really great conversation. I've enjoyed every single second of it. You say that to everyone.
I'm sorry we got slightly. Well, no, I have. I really have. And I well, to be honest, this is one of the reasons I do this, because it's selfishly, you know what? Just have some great conversations with people. I always learn something. It's really valuable. And I just, so I only wish I'd done it years ago, It would have been fantastic. Hey,
Thanks for having me.
No, quite all right. Listen, I appreciate your time. I know it's getting late over your side. I've got to go out and coach and play myself today, but it's getting late for you. So, listen, thanks very much. And then maybe we can, as we keep going on our learning journeys, at some point we'll reconnect and kind of share some of our experiences again another time.
Lovely, Stuart. Okay, mate. Keep fighting the good fight.
Right. Appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.